हरे राम 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 हरे। वो कर्टन बंद कर सकते हैं? ओके। So the Yamadutas are replying to the Vishnudutas' questions, and so they are describing who is liable for punishment. And so they're saying that how everyone in this material world is influenced by three modes, and so therefore everyone is liable to punishment because of the influence of the three modes. And only by engaging in devotional service, one can get free from the influence of the three modes. And so therefore, as we were discussing this point and the analogy of the iron rod put in fire, so as long as the iron rod is in touch with fire, it becomes fiery. And if it's not in touch with fire, then once again it's going to become cold iron. And so therefore, many times devotees also do ask these questions that over the years we have seen in our movement that devotees who became sannyasis, GBCs, gurus, now they also apparently could not continue in those positions and they once again became sort of contaminated. So, and devotees ask that question, why? Why does that happen? And so therefore, one should not think that simply those positions are a protection from the influence of three modes. So the positions are simply an opportunity for service, that's all. Whether it is being a sannyasi or a guru or a GBC or whatever. So there are opportunities, positions for service, and the institution requires people to do those services, spiritual organization. And so therefore, then those devotees who are qualified, at least they appear to be qualified at that particular point of time, then they're given that opportunity to serve. But one should always remember that simply those positions do not offer a protection from the influence of the three modes. And so every individual has to continue that struggle and continue that those spiritual practices by which one can protect oneself from the three modes. Okay. So therefore, as Krishna is saying in the Bhagavad Gita, Devesha gunamayi mama maya duratyaya mam eva ye prapadyante maya metam tarantite. So that mam eva prapadyate has to always continue. So if at any point of time one stops that, what will happen? Once again one will become influenced by three modes. So therefore, one can never think that, or one should not be surprised that, okay, somebody was in a big position and he could not continue, or he came down from that position. So it's the devotional practices have to continue in good intensity. So then only one will remain on the transcendental platform. One can be saved from the influence of three modes. So that's what we read from the 18th chapter, 40th verse, that practically in this material world, no one is free from the influence of three modes. So therefore, the struggle against the lower modes has to continue till one has the material body. Till one has the material body, till the last breath, that fight against the lower modes by engaging in pure devotional service has to continue. So if at any point of time one becomes lax in one's practices, then one will easily be influenced by the lower modes. So therefore, one cannot think that just because somebody has a certain position of seniority, number of years, positions, nothing is, so none of these external qualifications are not a protection from the influence of the lower modes. So the only qualification is Mam eve prapadyante, or Mam cha avyabhacharini bhakti. That is the only protection.
Like advanced people are pure devotees, so they have to take rest or sleeping anything. But that is not about nature of the body, not about the spiritual, the consciousness of.
Yes, that is natural. So as long as the body is there, so some basic bodily needs will always be there.
Consciousness is like a spiritual consciousness.
Yes, that there's no doubt about that. But it is the responsibility of the individual to maintain that spiritual consciousness. That is the point. That responsibility to maintain spiritual consciousness is a constant endeavor. And that is why in the Bhagavad Gita 14th chapter 10th verse, what Krishna says? There is always a competition among the three modes for supremacy. So at any point of time, if the struggle against the lower modes reduces, then what will happen? Immediately the lower modes will take over. And therefore in that purport Srila Prabhupada writes, if one wants to maintain at least sattva-gun, then two things are required. What? Constant practice and determination. That always has to be there. Constant practice and determination. So it is just like trying to swim against the current of the river. So if one is trying to swim against the current of the river, at any point of time, if he stops endeavoring, what will happen? He will be swept by the river. That's exactly. So material world means three modes, especially lower modes. So that struggle has to always continue. The moment one stops, finished. One will be swept by the lower modes. So whoever one is, at every point of time, that struggle, that endeavor to fight against the lower modes has to continue by appropriate spiritual practices. And that is what we see, that whoever one is, sannyasi, guru, GBC, whoever one is, if at any point of time, if they slacken their spiritual practices, then finished. They've been overcome by the lower modes. That's what happens. And that's what we were giving examples of highly advanced devotees. Bharat Maharaj, Jad Bharat, Dhruv Maharaj. So these people had darshan of the Supreme Lord, totally on the liberated platform. But still they were at risk. Then what to speak of anyone else? So, therefore one cannot take things for granted. And one cannot think that just because somebody is sannyasi guru, therefore he is free from the influence of lower modes. As long as the practice is there, till that point of time, he is free. The moment the spiritual practice reduces, finished. Yes. So therefore one can never take things for granted. That okay, 47. Vartamano anyayo kalo guna vigyapako yata evam janmanyayor etad dharma nidarshanam Just as springtime in the present indicates the nature of springtimes in the past and future, so this life of happiness, distress, or a mixture of both gives evidence concerning the religious and irreligious activities of one's past and future lives. So the purport Srila Prabhupada writes, our past and future are not very difficult to understand, for time is under the contamination of the three modes of material nature. As soon as spring arrives, the usual exhibition of various types of fruits and flowers automatically become manifest. And therefore we may conclude that spring in the past was adorned with similar fruits and flowers and will be so adorned in the future also. Our repetition of birth and death is taking place within time, and according to the influence of the modes of nature, we are receiving various types of bodies and being subjected to various conditions. I don't know if you remember, but in the teachings of Narad Muni to King Prachin Parishad, there is a similar discussion. And there he describes something very similar, but there he describes something more specific. And there he says, by the condition of one's mind, one can understand about one's past lives and one's future life. And of course, the mind is influenced by three modes. So it's very similar. So this is what he's saying here also. Here is given an example of the spring or now rainy season. So now there is rainy season. So it's raining throughout the day. Anything surprising? No. There was such rainy season in the past also. And it's going to be there in the future also. So similarly, there Narad Muni explains that by the condition of our mind now, what is the condition of my mind now? What are the thoughts in my mind? What is the contamination in my mind? I can understand what must my past have been. What conditionings, what material desires must have been in my past life. And I also will understand that if I continue this way, then what is my likely future destination? Both one can understand. So if there is material contamination now in my mind, what does it indicate? It was there in the past. And therefore I have it now. And if I continue to have the material contamination in the future, then what will happen? Then another material body. And it will continue. That is what will happen. So therefore, then if I want to end material life, end the influence of three modes in the future, then I will have to modify, I will have to change the nature of my mind, the influence of three modes right now. So that is what he's saying. So by the present life one is leading, life of happiness, distress, mixture of both, and how one is leading dharma, adharma, one can understand about one's past and future life. And Vishnu Thakur in his commentary says, the present life gives understanding of the extent of dharma and adharma in the previous and next life. Same point. So one can understand how much dharma one must have done in the past, how much of dharma, how much of adharma. And by my present condition also, I can understand in the future what is likely to take place, unless I change it. So an example is given. The springtime of the present gives an understanding of the qualities of spring with its fruits and flowers in the past and spring in the future. Similarly, this life shows the dharma and adharma of previous and past lives. So who's speaking all these verses? Yamadutas are speaking. They may look like fools. But they are speaking such amazing philosophy. Why? Because they have heard from Yamaraj. So whether they look like fools, they appear like fools or whatever, But the fact remains that, therefore, they have said right in the beginning, they said, Iti Shushma. We have heard all this. They have heard from authority and they are repeating the words of authority. So, therefore, all what they are speaking is perfect. And that is how one becomes perfect. That's what we heard in today's morning class. Srila Prabhupada is saying, postal peon. That's all. So I may be a fool or rascal or whatever, but if I simply repeat the words of the parampara, then that's perfect. Okay, next. Manasaiva pure deva purva rupam vipashyati anumimam sate purvam manasa bhagavanajaha.
The omnipotent Yamaraj is as good as Lord Brahma, for while situated in his own abode or in anyone's heart like the Paramatma, he mentally observes the past activities of a living entity and thus understands how the living entity will act in future lives.
Yes, this is an important verse. So here, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, one should not consider Yamaraj an ordinary living being. He is as good as Lord Brahma. He has the complete cooperation of the Supreme Lord who is situated in everyone's heart, and therefore by the grace of the Super Soul he can see past, present and future of living being from within. So this is how Yamaraj gets information, knowledge about all the living entities. How? From the Super Soul. By the grace of the Super Soul. So therefore, he is said to be as good as Lord Brahma. So just like Lord Brahma also receives knowledge from the Supreme Lord from within his heart. So that's how Yamaraj also gets knowledge about all the living entities from within his heart by the grace of the Super Soul. So he is not Super Soul, but Super Soul gives him all information about all the living entities. And that is how Yamaraj is able to decide who is to be punished, how much to be punished. So all that Yamaraj knows because of the grace of the Super Soul. He gives him all knowledge. And Vishwanath Thakur says, this is the general method of knowing the dharma, adharma and dharma of others. Yamaraj, however, by his mind, definitely sees everything. Situated in his city, Samyamani, Yama sees the persons in his previous birth with his dharma and adharma. Afterwards, he decides the present and future forms. He decides what is suitable for each person. He is omniscient, equal to Brahma. So that's what the Yamadutas are saying. So Yamaraj is not an ordinary person. He is as good as Lord Brahma, and therefore he is able to see the past and future of all the living entities. 49. Yatagyastamasa yukta upaste vyaktameva hi naveda purvam aparam nashta janma smritistata.
Translation: as a sleeping person acts according to the body manifested in his dreams and accepts it to be himself, so one identifies with his present body, which he acquired because of his past religious or irreligious actions, and is unable to know his past or future lives.
Okay, so here they're saying that just a sleeping person, so the sleeping person in his dream, he accepts one body and then he acts according to that body. So similarly, now in the present life, in the awakened state, one gets a body based upon one's previous karma, and then he acts. So he may not understand, so we may not understand why I have got this certain type of body and why I am acting like this. I may not understand. But the fact remains that based upon my previous activities, I have been given this body and then I have to act in this way. In the purport, Prabhupada writes, a man engages in sinful activities because he does not know what he did in his past life to get his present materially conditioned body, which is subjected to the threefold miseries. Nunam pramatta kurute vikarma yad indriya pritaya apranoti. Nasadu manyayata atmanoyam asanapi kleshada asadeha. Because of such sinful actions, one receives another body. So because of previous sinful activities, I get this body, And in this body, if I continue my sinful activities, then what will happen? I'll get another body. So this is how material life continues. So I may not remember what I did in my past to get this body. Does any one of us remember? No, we don't remember what I did in my past life. But the fact remains that because of my sinful activities, I have got this body. So therefore, is only Prahlada Maharaj was telling once. So, in the morning when we get up and we see ourselves in the mirror, and what do we see? What do we see? Huh? What do we see? Material body. So if we see material body, that means what? Sinful. What is it we're proud of? So somebody may think, oh, such a nice, beautiful body. Beautiful body or ugly body or whatever body. Body means sinful. Because of past sins, I have got this body. And then he says, just like jail dress. I think so, we told this before also. So, if somebody is wearing jail dress, that means what? Kaidi. So somebody may say, I've got new jail dress. New or old or whatever it is. Jail dress means kaidi, criminal. So similarly, if one is still seeing material body, that means sinful. He was sinful in the past, therefore material body. And if we continue our nonsense, same thing is going to continue. So that is what he is saying. So it should be understood that a person who does not have Vedic knowledge always acts in ignorance of what he has done in the past, what he is doing at the present, and how he will suffer in the future. He is completely in darkness. Therefore the Vedic injunction is tamasima, don't remain in darkness. Jyotirgama, try to go to the lights. The light or illumination is Vedic knowledge, which one can understand when he is elevated to the mode of goodness, or when he transcends the mode of goodness by engaging in the devotional service to the spiritual master and supreme Lord. Yasya deve parabhaktir yatha deve tata gurau tasyeta katitha artha prakashante mahatmanaha. So, important statement, when the Vedic knowledge is revealed, one need no longer remain in the darkness of material nature. So we already discussed this point. It has to be revealed by what? One must approach a spiritual master with full knowledge of the Vedas and be faithfully directed by him in order to become a devotee of the Lord. Then the knowledge of the Vedas will be revealed. And then Srila Prabhupada is explaining that in any case, one receives an inferior or superior body, the discretion of the Supreme Personality of God, Paramatma. So Paramatma directs material nature to give different types of bodies. And then Srila Prabhupada is raising a question. Why doesn't one please Bhagavan to receive a better body? The answer is Ajñastamasa, because of gross ignorance. One who is in complete darkness cannot know what his past life was or what his next life will be. He is simply interested in his present body. Even though he has a human body, a person in the mode of ignorance and interested only in his present body is like an animal. For an animal being covered by ignorance thinks that the ultimate goal of life and happiness is to eat as much as possible. So what's the other example Prabhupada gives for the animal's ignorance? Yes, so All the goats are standing in line to be slaughtered, but still, as long as the goat is getting the grass, he is happy eating the grass. He doesn't understand that very soon he is going to be slaughtered. Hmm. And then Prabhupada says a human being must be educated to understand his past life and how he can endeavor for a better life in the future. There's even a book called Bhrigu Samhita, which reveals information about one's past, present, and future lives according to astrological calculations. I think so. Some devotees also are consulting some experts on this, right? Bhrigu Samhita. Somehow or other, one must be enlightened about his past, present, and future. One who is interested only in his present body and he tries to enjoy his senses to the fullest extent is understood to be engrossed in the mode of ignorance. His future is very, very dark. Indeed, the future is always dark for one who is grossly covered by ignorance. Especially in this age, human society is covered by the mode of ignorance, and therefore everyone thinks his present body to be everything without consideration of the past or the future. 50. Panchabi kurute swarthan panchavedat panchabi ekastu shodashena trin swayam saptadashoshnate.
Above the five senses of perception, the five working senses and the five objects of the senses is the mind, which is the 16th element. Above the mind is the 17th element, the soul, the living being himself, who in cooperation with the other 16 enjoys the material world alone. The living being enjoys three kinds of situations, namely happy, distressful, and mixed.
Okay, so the mind, who in cooperation with the other 16 enjoys the material world alone. So these are the instruments of the mind. Now this also you have studied in the 5th canto. In Jad Bharat's teachings to Maharaj Raghuna, in the 11th chapter, the entire 11th chapter is mainly dealing with one subject matter. What is that? Mind. Yes, mind. And there Jad Bharat is explaining that this is how the mind functions. These are the instruments of the mind. What? What are the instruments? Yes, the 5 working senses, the 5 knowledge acquiring senses, the 5 objects of senses. So all these are the instruments with which the mind works in order to fulfill its various desires. And then whatever is the result, happiness, suffering, that the mind only has to experience. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that everyone engages in work with his hands, legs, other senses just to achieve a certain goal according to his concocted ideas. One tries to enjoy the 5 sense objects, namely form, sound, taste, aroma, and touch, not knowing the actual goal of life, which is to satisfy the Supreme Lord. Because of disobeying the Supreme Lord, one is put into material conditions, and he then tries to improve his situation in a concocted way, not desiring to follow the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Nevertheless, the Supreme Lord is so kind that he comes himself to instruct the bewildered living entity how to act obediently and then gradually return home back to Godhead, where he can attain an eternal peaceful life of bliss and knowledge. The living entity has a body which is very complicated combination of the material elements, and with his body he struggles alone, as indicated in this verse by the words ekastu. For example, if one is struggling in the ocean, he must swim through it alone. Although many other men and aquatics are swimming in the ocean, he must take care of himself because no one else will help him. Therefore, this verse indicates that the 17th item, the soul, must work alone. Although he tries to create society, friendship, and love, no one will be able to help him but Krishna, the Supreme Lord. Therefore, his only concern should be how to satisfy Krishna. That is also what Krishna wants. Sarvadharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam vraja. People bewildered by material conditions try to be united, but although they strive for unity among many nations, all their attempts are futile. Everyone must struggle alone for existence with the many elements of nature. Therefore, one's only hope, as Krishna advises, is to surrender unto him, for he can help one become free from the ocean of nations. Is quoting Mahaprabhu. Ainanda tanuja kinkaram paditam mam vishame bhavambudau kripaya tava pada pankaja stita dhuli sadrisham vichintaya. And then he's quoting Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Anadi karma phale padi bhavanava jale tarivare nadhi ki upay. We should remember that everyone is responsible for his own life. Very important. Everyone is responsible for his own life. If an individual becomes a pure devotee of Krishna, he is then delivered from the ocean of nations. So here Srila Prabhupada is giving the example of the swimmer who has to swim alone. When he's swimming in the ocean, he has to swim alone. Others may help or whatever. And we know another purpose Srila Prabhupada is given the example of. Yes. When the airplane takes off, he has to fly his own plane. We should remember that everyone is responsible for his own life. Very important points. And so, the subject matter is discussed even by Lord Kapila in the third canto, where he talks about, of course he talks about the sinful living entities. And okay, maybe we can read some of those verses. We will go to third canto. So see third canto. I suppose this is 30th chapter. And the 30th verse. Yes. Evam kutumbam bibhrana udaram bhara eva va vistrije ho bhayam pretya bhungte tat phalam idrisham. After leaving this body, the man who maintained himself and his family members by sinful activities suffers a hellish life, and his relatives suffer also. So here, there's only this one important sentence. Species lower than human beings are not responsible for their actions because they are made to act in a certain way. But in the developed life of human consciousness, if one is not responsible for his activities, then he is sure to get a hellish life as described herein. Okay. So now, the next verse. He goes alone to the darkest regions of hell. This is the point we're discussing. He goes alone. That's the point. He goes alone. Ekaha. In this verse also the same word is coming, right? Eka. He goes alone to the darkest regions of hell after quitting the present body, and the money he acquired by envying other living entities is a passage money. So just like one pays money to get visa and passport, so this is his passage money. The money he acquired by envying other living entities, that becomes his passage money To go where? Hell. So with that money, he has bought the ticket to go to hell. So Prabhupada explains, so this is a very important purport. Many times people also ask questions in connection to this topic. When a man earns money by unfair means and maintains his family and himself with that money, the money is enjoyed by many members of the family, but he alone goes to hell. So others may enjoy the money, but who goes to hell? He alone goes to hell. So the important point is what? Everyone is responsible for his own actions. We'll discuss how this is very much important in the society of devotees also. A person who enjoys life by earning money or by envying another's life and who enjoys with family and friends will have to enjoy alone the resultant sinful reactions accrued from such violent and illicit life. And we all know the famous story of Valmiki. So that's what Narad Muni told him. You go and ask your family members whether they'll take your sinful reactions. No, your business. For example, if a man secures some money by killing someone and with that money maintains his family, those who enjoy the black money earned by him are also partially responsible and are also sent to hell. But he who is the leader is especially punished. So here Srila Prabhupada explained the others also get some punishment. It's not that they're totally spared, but the leader gets special punishment. Right. Correct. Yes, that's right. So like that. So the others also get some reaction, but the one who has actually earned the money by murdering or whatever, he has to get special punishment. He has to suffer the most. The result of material enjoyment is that one takes with him the sinful reaction only and not the money. The money he earned is left in this world and he takes only the reaction. All these facts of life. In this world also, if a person acquires some money by murdering someone, the family is not hanged, although its members are sinfully contaminated. But the man who commits the murder and maintains his family is himself hanged as a murderer. And a very nice, not nice actually, but a very important principle. The direct offender is more responsible for sinful activities than the indirect enjoyer. Very important principle. The direct offender is more responsible for sinful activities than the indirect enjoyer. The great learned scholar Chanakya Pandit says, therefore, that whatever one has in his possession had better be spent for the cause of Sat, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because one cannot take his possessions with him. They remain here and they will be lost. Either we leave the money or the money leaves us, but we will be separated. The best use of money, as long as it is within our possession, is to spend it to acquire Krishna consciousness. Okay, so now, right, in the next verse he says, thus by the arrangement of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the maintainer of kinsmen is put into a hellish condition to suffer for his sinful activities, just like a man who has lost his wealth. So, one has to suffer. And the next verse he says, therefore a person who is very eager to maintain his family and kinsmen simply by black methods, adharmena, kevalena hi adharmena, kutumba bharana, utsuka, very utsuk, to maintain the family by adharma. But the result is what? He goes to the darkest region of hell known as Andhatamisra. Now coming back to the 6th canto. And so therefore, in this purport, 330, 33, Prabhupada is giving a very important instruction for everyone, including devotees. And what is that? One should work honestly according to his qualification. He should not earn his livelihood unfairly by means for which he is not qualified. So one should not indulge in unnecessarily cheating and all these things. So that's what we are studying here. One has to be convinced of this point that whatever I do, I'm definitely going to get reaction. One is not going to be spared. Whoever one is, the reaction is definite. And therefore, Prabhupada is further down, he is writing, it is especially mentioned, now this is for especially devotees, Prabhupada is giving instruction. It is especially mentioned that the means of livelihood of those who are trying to advance in Krishna consciousness must be very fair and uncomplicated. Very fair and uncomplicated. Here it is mentioned that he who earns his livelihood by unfair means is sent to the darkest hellish region. Otherwise, if one maintains his family by prescribed methods and honest means, there is no objection to one's being a family man. Okay, now we'll go back to the 6th canto. So therefore, the important point of discussion here is what? We should remember that everyone is responsible for his own life. So in the Bhakti Shastri class also many questions were coming on the subject matter. And so devotees also asked these questions that so a very specific question was asked by one devotee. So he asked that, so here within our society, if I am serving a senior devotee and the senior devotee is doing some wrong activities, so maybe earning money by wrong means or misusing money, misusing donations, whatever. So then, and if I am serving him, then do I also become responsible for his wrong activities? Will I also have to face some reaction? What do you think is the answer? Whatever answer you give, to give some explanation.
If he is helping, then he is helping or
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But what if he has been told to do that service by higher authorities?
you can go this other I have check with seniors.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Hmm? Mm. 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 Yes, that's a good answer. Mm. Yes. So if somebody is just simply serving and he has no responsibility, he is simply serving in that particular department, and he is simply doing his part, and he has no ill motivations, he has no it's not that he is misusing the money for himself in any way, then he will not be incriminated because he is doing his service. That's all. So that is what is being discussed here. Everyone is responsible for his own life. So if I simply do my service properly, I am safe. So if my senior, he is doing some nonsense, he is responsible for his own nonsense. Of course, I can definitely inform this to concerned authorities. I can inform. But after that, I am not responsible for what that person is doing. So therefore, I don't have to get unnecessarily disturbed because of what that person is doing. So everyone is responsible for his own life. So if I have been given a certain service and I do that service honestly, then I get the benefit of that service. If I've been told to serve in this department, in this particular capacity, and I'm doing that service sincerely, without ulterior motives, then I don't face any consequence. But if I am also assisting that senior in making some ulterior plans and getting money by crooked means, if I'm also doing that, then yes, of course I become responsible. So therefore, everyone is responsible for his own life. And as we were discussing, it does not matter. Positions have nothing to do with spiritual advancement and spiritual progress. So therefore, whoever it may be, if he is doing nonsense, he will be responsible for it. And he will have to face the reaction for it. And yes. So therefore, we have to understand this point that we have to do our part sincerely. And just because some senior is doing something wrong, and if I justify my wrongdoings on the basis of the seniors doing wrong, is it a logical justification? Then the result will be he will be punished, and I will also be punished. That is what will happen. So therefore, every individual has to see whether I am doing my work properly or not. Every individual has to see that. I cannot justify saying, oh, that senior is doing like this, that senior is doing like this, therefore I am also doing like this. Okay, he will suffer, and you will also suffer. Very simple. I can't justify it that way. So if, similarly, the principle applies to everything. So sometimes devotees, they justify things like this. So they say, seniors are doing like this, therefore I am doing. That's useless justification it is. So if they are doing wrong, I am also doing wrong, they will get punished, I will also get punished. That is how it works. Everyone is responsible for his own life. So therefore, so I have to understand, therefore I have to understand what I am doing, is it according to dharma or not? Am I following dharma properly? So everyone has to understand for himself what one is doing. And everyone is responsible and everyone gets the reactions accordingly. Any? हाँ बोलो.
Comes to mind.
I think so. Those online, some devotees are listening. I think they won't be able to hear. In the meantime, I'll tell what His Holiness we can remember. His Holiness Badrinarayan Swami. And I think so. I told this before also. So he says, if you ask a temple devotee, why didn't you come for Mangalarti today? Maharaj, that senior also does not come. That senior also does not come. So then he says, when we were two brothers in our childhood. So when I would do some mischief, something wrong, and mother would ask me, why you did like this? I would say, but my elder brother also does like this. And then she would say, if he falls in the ditch, will you also fall? So that's a useless justification. बोलिए. अच्छा नहीं चलने वाला है? ठीक है, फिर we'll continue. I'll repeat the question for them to hear. Okay, I'll repeat as you speak so that they can. Online कोई? अच्छा ठीक है, you come here and.
Two things come to mind.
Hare Krishna. Hare.
As Prabhupada is mentioning this 3:30:30 that how the family members of the performer were also partially responsible and they also get the partial reactions. And as we discuss this question, authority involves in malpractices and that person is told to do and he is doing without ulterior motives, he may not get punished. So two things comes to mind that the first things which Prabhupada is mentioning it is based upon the karmic reaction point of view.
Because in the case of money, as Prabhupada is also explaining, they are enjoying them. So they're enjoying the money that he has earned by wrong means. So therefore they have to partially suffer.
So they means then a person is, let's say those people they don't have any alternative or they don't have shelter. And same case for this person also. So same principle apply, or here because the fact of devotional service is there, the person devotional service and Krishna seeing the attitude, so some other factor also involved. It's like that or how?
Yes. So in the case of that man who is earning by wrong means and the family members, they're enjoying that money, correct? So because they're enjoying that money which has earned by wrong means, therefore they also have to partially suffer. But in the case of a devotee who's simply doing his service, so there's no enjoyment there, right? So now if the senior devotee, he is doing malpractices, he is earning money, and this junior is taking some part of that money and he is also enjoying, then he will have to face some reaction. But if there is no question of enjoyment, but if the junior devotee is simply performing his service and he knows that he is doing something wrong and he is not supporting him in the sense that he is not agreeing with what he is doing, but he has to do because that is the service told by temple authorities or whatever be the situation. If he has no alternative and he has to just serve, then in that, and he is serving with the proper intentions, he is not enjoying the money or whatever. So then in that case, he doesn't have to suffer. But if in any way he is sort of cooperating with the wrong practices, if he's cooperating with the wrong practices and he is also enjoying a part of that, then he will have to face some reaction.
So when we say this word, the word enjoying, as a, let's say in the first case, the family, means if we say the enjoyment is just the basic maintenance of their material body. Now here also, the devotee also is sustained upon them just for the basic maintenance of the material body. So, and of course, those family members are also not like, they are also not supporting or whatever, but there's no option for them. And like the way he's just sustaining for his basic material body sustenance, he's not supporting. So, same thing applies or how?
See, it's a different situation in the case of the family, because in the case of the family, then it is now they have come together on the basis of their karma. It is, there's some collective karma that has been involved, therefore they have come together, and so there are all these factors involved. But in the case of devotional service, then everything depends upon the performer. So if the intention of the performer of that particular service is pure, then he doesn't get any reaction.
So basically, that intention has the weightage.
Yes, that intention makes a big difference on the path of devotional service. So if the intention is that he wants to, he's just serving because he has been told to, and he has nothing to give and take with what the senior is doing, then he doesn't get any reaction. So just like Srila Prabhupada often gives the example of the soldier. So the soldier, he's fighting and killing, but he's doing that simply because of instruction. Then he doesn't get any reaction even though he's killing. So the same principle. So yes, so that's the point. That ultimately everything depends upon why one is doing what one is doing. So so ultimately everyone is therefore responsible for his own devotional practices and his own life. So one can receive help, one can receive good guidance, association, all that one can get. But ultimately, one has to practice, one has to execute the instructions, one has to make one's own spiritual progress. Every Jivatma is individual. Today morning's class also Srila Prabhupada is quoting the verse from Bhagavad Gita, 2nd chapter, 12th verse. What is that? Yes. Natvevaham jatunasam natvam nemi janadipa na chaiva na bhavishyama sarve vayam atha param. So everyone is individual. There were individuals in the past, the individuals now, they'll continue to remain individuals in the future, and so each one is responsible for his own life. And and the same principle, I'm not exactly sure about the reference for this, but I did read or hear about this somewhere, that the same principle applies for spiritual master and disciples also. So the devotional service of the disciples does not give any devotional credits to the spiritual master. The disciples are responsible for their own life, the spiritual master is also responsible for his own life. So every individual is responsible for his own devotional practices. So the spiritual master, so his service is to give guidance to the disciples. That is his service. And how well he does that determines his spiritual progress. The disciple's duty is to follow the instructions. Based upon how he follows, then he makes progress. So everyone is responsible for his own devotional life, for his own life.
This reaction wala case, then someone, like say Rath Yatra, permission. It's not easily getting, somehow there you have to get it. And then somebody has asked you to do it. Or in company, somebody is doing some practice to get his work done because his boss told him. So in that case, because he's been asked to do, he's not enjoying in that case. Whatever, he gets done. So then in that case, he should not be responsible, right? But since because he is a part of it, so he will get reaction.
See, there are different dynamics in materialistic life and in devotional life. So in materialistic life, as Srila Prabhupada spoke about this, honesty among thieves. Correct? So if they say, okay, we have got this money by looting and then we'll divide it honestly. But it makes no sense because the first point is the money is got by dishonest means. So therefore, when it comes to material life, then everyone is simply working for sense gratification, everyone is dishonest. So everything simply works according to karma. Based upon each one's karma, they get the reactions. So therefore, even though there's an employee who's working for the employer is giving instructions for his sense gratification, the employee is also working for his own sense gratification. So ultimately, everyone is dishonest. So therefore, everyone simply gets karmic reactions for what they're doing. But in a devotional circle, then things are slightly different because then here everyone is working for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord, and then based upon one's intentions and motivations to please the Supreme Lord, then things vary.
Even though he's a devotee, let's say.
No, you see, if you mix up things, then it becomes very complicated. So now, okay, if you say the employee is a devotee, then what?
His boss told, get it done, somehow or other. And because he has to, because boss has told. So then, will he be responsible for this act?
Here in Maharashtra, there was one devotee who was the secretary to the health minister. He was a doctor. And he was the secretary to the health minister. So he was like almost just below the minister. So very high post, initiated devotee. And now we all know what happens in government services. Without bribes, nothing works. Now this devotee, so he wanted to be honest. He didn't want to take bribes. But now he's on the top post. So then when he refused to take bribes, the juniors, they became insecure. Because if the top man is not taking, how can they take? So they felt insecure. So then they plotted to murder him. So then the devotee consulted the spiritual master. The spiritual master said, leave the job. So if somebody is a devotee, then just because the superior is saying, I cannot compromise on my principles. I can't compromise. So, what's that? I was going to tell one more example. Just like now, if a senior, he says, and these things happen, right, in companies and all, they all go for parties and all that. Now, if a senior says, if you don't eat meat, I'll kick you out from the job, and he's a devotee, what will he do? He'll eat? There's no question. He said, you kick me out. Krishna will take care. Can't compromise, right? So we can't compromise on these principles. So therefore, we have to understand this principle. I am responsible for my own life. So if I say, just because my superior has instructed me to do this nonsense and I do it, what will happen? I have to face the reaction. So this is how things work. I can't compromise. Just because senior is saying. So everything has to be according to the principles of dharma. So only when instruction is coming directly from Krishna or Krishna's pure representative, then it is fine. We discuss Yudhishthira Maharaj. Krishna is telling, tell lies. Then it is fine. Otherwise, no. Otherwise, I have to follow. I am responsible for what I do. Yes. Yes. That's what Prabhupada is giving instruction for devotees. Grihastha devotees especially there. Fair and uncomplicated. Otherwise, one will have to suffer reactions. I can give another example. So just like in a hospital, there are gynecologists. So if there's a devotee gynecologist and the senior is telling him to do abortion, can he do? If he does, he's going to face the reaction. So these are all stringent laws of material nature. One cannot escape. So I have to see what is right, what is wrong, and act accordingly. Just because senior is saying, I cannot blindly follow if it is going against the principles of dharma. Whether it's outside world or within the society of devotees, the same principle applies. We have already studied this, right? Srila Prabhupada is writing regarding the meat eating in the 4th canto, 1 purport. Prabhupada is writing. Yes. All get the reaction. Okay, the lady wants to get the abortion done, but why are you supporting her by doing the abortion? If there is nobody to do the abortion, then what she'll do? Huh? So, there is no justification. There is no justification. This is dharma. This is what is being discussed here. What is dharma? What is dharma? Who can be punished? This is what is being discussed. And all these stringent laws of material nature, Prabhupada in so many lectures, one can't escape. One can't justify things. Then one has to be ready for the reaction. So therefore, every person, every devotee Every individual has to think, what am I doing? Is it according to dharma? Is it according to the principles told by the Shastras? Everyone has to think for himself, everyone is responsible. ठीक है ना? Yes, Vishnu.
One practical example situation coming in my mind. I personally face problem this, that in our ashram this very simple down to earth, this natural ice cream is very famous in our ashram.
What's that?
Natural ice creams. Natural ice cream.
Natural ice cream.
There is a shop nearby. It's the famous shop. And previously from Parampara it's coming in our ashram.
So which parampara?
I heard recently Tamalkish Maharaj used to bring or like that.
Okay.
So now when it's come, so I am doubtful whether it is offered or not, and it's distributed in ashram, should we take or not. And then I generally don't take puji personally, and whatever. And sometimes my seniors also offer me, they invite me and take. And how I reject it, so I took. So how it is, puji, how we see this situation?
Of course, this is not so dangerous.
It's for our enjoyment, we are taking it.
So,
It's not offered.
so why it is not offered?
Whatever comes is doesn't offered. Puji.
Huh? Whatever comes is not offered.
From outside it comes, it's just distributed. Like that. Sometimes some fruit juices comes, the bottles are distributed.
What? I didn't get that. Council has to?
Council and kitchen in charge has to take that, They want to distribute it.
So, but I mean, okay, Hemgiri Prabhu is here. Maybe he can answer. So I'm just a little curious to know, why don't they offer? Okay, if it's got from outside source and it's very natural and all that, but at least why not do the offering? Is there any?
No, generally, Prabhuji, they do offer. It's not that they don't offer. Is it your question about offering, or is it a question about accepting or not accepting?
Unoffered distribution and they offered us outside. It was
See, as far as just like there are things which we accept which are manufactured outside, right? Like papad, for example. So papad is manufactured outside in the outside factory, but we offer and we accept, isn't it? So there are some things which, if prepared outside in a sort of bona fide way or whatever, so then there are certain things which we accept from outside, like even sevai, for example. So that also is manufactured outside, but we use it. So there are certain things which we buy from outside, but at least if it's offered, then if at all there's some reaction, it will be nullified. So maybe at least the suggestion for offering can be given.
the second situation, that sometime we are into some permission or getting some things, then we have to give some bribe. People, government officer expect some bribe if we have to go ahead with things. Then is it okay to give bribe to them for our personal or service to temple.
No, but here this is not personal, na? So this is for Krishna's service. So if it is for Krishna's service and there is no other alternative, and it is only a question of giving some money, right? It's not outright sinful activity in the sense like doing some sin, but it is giving money to someone, it's paying someone, it's just like paying someone. You have to pay something to get something done, right? For getting anything done, you have to pay something. So in this case also, if that is what has to be done, it's a payment that has to be made to get that work done for Krishna, then that's fine. So because it's ultimately meant for Krishna, there is no personal motivation involved over there. So then that's fine.
Prabhuji's second question is asked in Bhagavatam class by one of our devotee only. So, like, the answer was that we generally devotees never do bribing. We give prasadam, but we even for Rath Yatra permissions or anything, we talk to the different people, different authorities, and we give Mahaprasadam and we never give bribes. People are not blind. If they notice that we are giving bribes, there are lots of chaos in the society. So this was a question asked in the Bhagavatam class. And second thing, Prabhuji, to the Prabhuji's first question, offering. Sometimes it happens, even though it is offered, because it comes in the kitchen and from kitchen they will bring, or sometimes some of the quantity they offer and they will bring here. Because kitchen in charge, what happens is he was like bombarded with many people with many questions. Who brought it? Where? Who is sponsored? For what is the reason sponsoring this? There's so many bombardments he faces that sometimes I notice this. He says, "Kuch offer nahi kiya. Khate to khao, nahi to chao." So there are many parameters where need to be directly understood what is what.
Of course, better to be careful while making a blind statement like that. So, because devotees are interested in knowing that. Because that's an important part of our devotional practice, that we accept only offered food. So one cannot take that casually and make a casual remark. So if it has been offered, one should say that it has been offered. So anyways, regarding the bribe thing, that's what. So if it is, as far as possible, one should definitely try to avoid. But if there's no other way out, then what to do? So then Krishna will take care, because it is for his service. But one can try and avoid if possible. Okay, let's proceed. But the important points which we should remember, Prabhupada is writing, we should remember. What is that? Everyone is responsible for his own life. That's the point we should remember. Okay, 51. Tadeta shodasha kalam lingam shakti trayam mahat dhatte anu samsmritim pumsi harsha shoka bhayartidam.
The subtle body is endowed with 16 parts, the 5 knowledge-acquiring senses, the 5 working senses, the 5 object of sense gratification, and the mind. This subtle body is an effect of the 3 modes of material nature. It is composed of insurmountably strong desires, and therefore it causes the living entity to transmigrate from one body to another in human life, animal life, and life as a demigod. When the living entity gets the body of a demigod, he is certainly very jubilant. When he gets a human body, he is always in lamentation. And when he gets the body of an animal, he is always afraid. In all conditions, however, he is actually miserable. His miserable condition is called samsriti, or transmigration in material life.
Okay, so here basically the Yamadutas are explaining the cause of samsmriti, the transmigration in material life, and then the root cause of that is
Desire.
the subtle body, the mind. So that is the root cause. So anyways, we won't go into that subject matter again. So you can read the 11th chapter of the 5th canto, all details. And also another very good section on this topic is the last section of the 29th chapter of the 4th canto, Narad Muni's instructions to King Prachin Barishad. This is also elaborately discussing on this subject matter of the minds. So if these two are very good sections, 5th canto, 11th and 12th chapter, especially the 11th chapter, and the last part of the 29th chapter, that's a huge chapter, almost 81 verses, and almost from the 60th verse to the end of the chapter, that whole section is on the subtle body, the minds. And so the mind is responsible for the samsmriti, transmigration from one body to another. And therefore one has to be very careful with the minds. And as Krishna also says in the Bhagavad Gita, Mamevamsho jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana manashashtan indriyani prakriti sthani karshati. So this prakriti sthani karshati is because of this minds. In this purport, Prabhupada is basically talking about Devesha Gunamai Mammaya Duratya. This is a short purport. 52. Deyagyojita Shadvargo Nechan Karmani Karyate Koshakara Imatmanam Karmana Chadya Muyyati.
The foolish embodied living entity, inept at controlling his senses and mind, is forced to act according to the influence of the modes of material nature against his desires. He is like a silkworm that uses its own saliva to create a cocoon and then becomes trapped in it, with no possibility of getting out. The living entity traps himself in a network of his own fruitive activities and then can find no way to release himself. Thus he is always bewildered and repeatedly he dies.
Prabhupada is giving a short purport. He says, as already explained, the influence of the modes of nature is very strong. The living entity entangled in different types of fruitive activities like a silkworm trapped in a cocoon. Getting free is very difficult unless he is helped by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Vishnu Chakravarti commenting on the verse, he says, though sometimes the jiva does not want to do activities, he is forced to do so by the subtle body. Then he becomes bewildered like a silkworm and does not know how to get out of the tangle. So this is the power of the subtle body, the mind. So how is this functioning? How is this working? How does the mind force a person to do things? Of course, if we study that same verse, Deveshu Gunamai Mammaya Duratya, there Srila Prabhupada is explaining these things. And of course, he is also explaining in the 5th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the section 13 to 16, 5th chapter, 13 to 16, that's also a good section where Srila Prabhupada is explaining these things quite in detail. And so in 7:14, Srila Prabhupada explains that in this material world, the living entity is like a person with his hands and feet tightly bound by ropes. So practically there is no independence. So how do we understand this? So on one hand, we do know that the jiva has free will, correct? But on the other hand, here it is being said that the jiva has practically no independence in this material world. So how do we understand this? Okay, so what happens exactly? Pass the mic.
Act in a way, like that verse comes from Anichana Pivarshni, Baladeva Niyojita. So even if he doesn't want, he knows that thing is bad. But still, because of his past habits, because of the modes, he is bound to act in.
Can you give some example?
Any person doing any sinful activity, a robber, a thief, he knows that if he steals, that is a criminal activity. But still he does it because I think Prabhupada gives that one on a pilgrimage, some pilgrim, he had that habit of
Stealing.
So he didn't steal, but then he tries like
Yes, he
misplaces
shuffled things around.
like that.
That was because of his past habit. So the habit is because of? What is that conditioning? Yes, the modes basically. So it's the lower modes basically. Bad habits means lower modes. So to give a simple example, so of course that example is very appropriate, that is of the thief. To give another simple example, so just like if there's a chronic drunkard, he's addicted to drinking. So if you place a bottle of wine in front of him, so does he have independence or no? Technically he has, but what will he do? He will drink. Why? Who forces him to drink? Which mode? The tamogun. The tamogun forces him to drink. So he is so bound by the tamogun that he practically cannot exercise his free will. So even though theoretically the free will is there, but he is so bound by the tamogun forces him to drink. And that is what happens. So then even when the person, he wants to get rid of the habit, he knows how the habit is troubling him, how it is causing so much of misery, he wants to get rid of it. And theoretically he knows it is bad, but still he is unable to do it. Why? The tamogun forces him. And that is exactly what is being said over here. He becomes like the silkworm trapped in the cocoon. He becomes trapped. Who traps him? Who traps him? Modes. But who is the cause of that? He himself. So because of his own desires, he puts himself into that trap. And since when those desires are coming? Since time immemorial. So since time immemorial has developed those desires, because of the desires he has become tied by the modes, and therefore he has become trapped in his own cocoon. That's what is said here. He is like a silkworm that uses his own saliva to create a cocoon and then becomes trapped in it with no possibility of getting out. The living entity traps himself in a network of his own fruitive activities and then can find no way to release himself. This is what happens. So, that is the influence of Rajoguna and Tamagun. That Kama Esha, Krodha Esha is due to what? Lower modes. Rajoguna, Tamagun. Rajoguna, Samudbhava. So that is what happens in conditioned life. That is what happens in material life. And that's how he becomes trapped, totally bound by the three modes. Very difficult to get released. He is forced. So even though the jiva does not want to do the activities, he is forced to do so by the subtle body. And the subtle body is influenced by the modes. And therefore, okay, we'll come to the solution a little bit later. So therefore in the next verse he says, they are saying, Nahi kasyit shanamapi jatu tishtatya karma krit Karyate hi avasha karma gunai swabhavikeir balat. There's a similar verse. Yes, Bhagavad, 3rd chapter, 5th verse. Only the last part is different. And there it says what? Karyate avasha karma sarva prakriti jair gune. That's the only difference. So, read.
Not a single living entity can remain unengaged even for a moment. One must act by his natural tendency according to the three modes of material nature, because this natural tendency forcibly makes him work in a particular way.
Yes. Nahi kasyat shanamapi jatu tishtatya akarmakrit. So no one can remain unengaged even for a moment. The modes will force him to a karyate avasha karma. So therefore, if somebody thinks, I will not do anything, I will simply sleep. So he will be able to sleep as long as the tamogun allows him. He is bound. So when the Rajogun becomes active, he will have to jump out of the bed. He cannot sleep. So it's not so easy even to sit down. That is why sitting in the class for such a long time is not easy. It requires some sattva to sit. So, to sit is also not easy. And we all have experience. We are all trying to sit somehow, because at least theoretically we know it is good for us. But where does the Rajogun act? Because we are not free from Rajogun. So body, we are making the body sit forcibly. The Rajogun still acts on the mind. And then what happens in the mind? Then the mind is going, oscillating, traveling in the 14 planetary system. So many things are happening. So, therefore, one has to engage in devotional activities. So Prabhupada writes in this purport, one's swabhava or natural tendency is the most important factor in action. One's natural tendency is to serve, because living entity is eternal servant of God. The living entity wants to serve, but because of his forgetfulness of his relationship with Supreme Lord, he serves under the modes of material nature and manufactures various modes of service, socialism, humanitarianism, altruism. So service one has to do. However, one should be enlightened in the tenets of Bhagavad Gita and accept the instructions of Supreme Personality of Godhead that one give up all natural tendencies for material service and different names and take to the service of the Lord. One's original natural tendency is to act in Krishna consciousness because one's real nature is spiritual. The duty of a human being is to understand that since he is essentially spirit, he must abide by the spiritual tendency and not be carried with material tendencies. Mayar vashe yacha beshe kachaha budubu bai. Jeev Krishna Das, ei Vishwas, kar le tara dukkanai. If one returns to his original natural tendency in the human form of life by understanding the perfect knowledge given by Krishna himself in the Vedic literature, one's life is successful. Now basically, the Yamadutas, what they are explaining? They are explaining who is punishable. And they are trying to explain that everyone is punishable in this world, because everyone in this material world acts according to the three modes and is performing sinful activities or pious activities. Therefore, everyone is punishable. That is why they're explaining all these things, that how everyone in this material world is controlled by the modes. But there is one very important point which Prabhupada explains. Okay, that we will discuss when we come to the 55th verse. Okay, before that, the 54th verse is Labdhva nimittam avyaktam vyakta vyaktam bhavatyuta yatha yoni yatha bijam swabhavena baliyasa.
The fruitive activities a living being performs, whether pious or impious, are the unseen cause for the fulfillment of his desires. This unseen cause is the root for the living entity's different bodies. Because of his intense desire, the living entity takes birth in a particular family and receives a body which is either like that of his mother or like that of his father. The gross and subtle bodies are created according to his desire.
Okay, so everything is based on desire. So based upon desire, then the influence of the three modes, then one performs different activities, and then based upon that one gets different bodies. And the bodies are according to Father, yatha yoni, yatha bijam. So that's how one gets different bodies. So I think so this is easy to understand. Prabhupada is quoting yam yam vapi smaran bhava. So based upon one's desire, then that is what one remembers, and that's how one gets different bodies. So, and one important statement in the purport Prabhupada writes is, these are the subtle laws of nature which act according to the desire of the living entity. Everything is based on desire. If a human being is taught to change his subtle body by developing a consciousness of Krishna at the time of death, the subtle body will create a gross body in which he will be a devotee of Krishna, or if he is still more perfect, he will not take another material body, but will immediately get a spiritual body and thus return home back to Godhead. This is the process of the transmigration of the soul. Okay? So therefore, that quality of desires needs to change. So if at the time of death one has spiritual desires, then one will get spiritual body. 55. Esha prakriti sangena purushasya viparyaya asitsa eva na chirad isha sangat viliyate.
Since a living entity is associated with material nature, he is in an awkward position. But if in the human form of life he is taught how to associate with the Supreme Personality of Godhead or his devotee, this position can be overcome.
So the Yamadutas are also giving solution. How to get free from the influence of three modes. If in the human form of life he is taught how to associate with the Supreme Personality of Godhead or his devotee, then this position within the three modes is overcome. Isha Sangat. The solution is Isha Sangat, association with the Supreme Lord. And Prabhupada is explaining that if one wants to continue his association with Prakriti, the female energy of Krishna, and be separated from Krishna by the illusion that he is able to enjoy Prakriti, he must continue in his conditional life. If he changes his consciousness, however, and associates with the Supreme Original Person, Purusham Shashvatam, or with his associates, he can get out of the entanglement of material nature. Janma karma chame divyam. So now, how this association helps, Srila Prabhupada beautifully explains in Bhagavad Gita, 13th chapter, 22nd verse. Famous verse, what is that? 13th chapter, 22nd verse. Purusha prakriti stohi bhungte prakriti jan gunan karanam gunasangasya sadasadyoni janmasu. So this is actually the Mahavakya of the last 6 chapters of the Gita. The entire last 6 chapters are based on this one verse. How the jiva is entangled in 3 modes and gets different bodies. Somebody opened? Yes. Read the second paragraph.
How he is put into such different bodies is explained here. It is due to association with the different modes of nature. One has to rise, therefore, above the 3 material modes and become situated in the transcendental position. That is called Krishna consciousness. Unless one is situated in Krishna consciousness, his material consciousness will oblige him to transfer from one body to another, because he has material desire since time immemorial. But he has to change that conception.
Yeah, so he has material desires since time immemorial. And so as long as he has material desires, that will force him to take different bodies. Okay, continue.
That change can be effected only by hearing from authoritative sources.
Yes, that's the important point. That change can only happen by hearing. That change can be effected. So material desires are since time immemorial. And because of those material desires, he is forced to accept different material bodies. How those material desires are going to change? Only possible by hearing. That's what happened to all of us, right? Only by hearing we are trying to change our desires. And the best example is here. Arjuna is hearing the signs of God from Krishna. Now the next statement is the most amazing, beautiful statement, so precise and yet so deep, and it's encapsulating so much within that one sentence. The living entity, if he submits to this hearing process, will lose his long cherished desire to dominate material nature, and gradually and proportionately, as he reduces his long desire to dominate, he comes to enjoy spiritual happiness. Every word is filled with so much of meaning. You see, Srila Prabhupada didn't say the living entity if he hears from authoritative sources. Though previously he did say. But here what he says? Submits to this hearing process. So what does that mean? Yes, submission means to apply. Otherwise, if one simply hears and walks off, what's the use? So if one is hearing submissively, that means one will also make an attempt to apply. If he submits to this hearing process, then when one hears all this knowledge, one hears what is one's constitutional position, what one is supposed to do. When one hears all this, then what will happen? He loses his long cherished desire to dominate material nature. So by hearing, one will understand that if I try to dominate, what will I get? Suffering. So therefore, I need to change these desires. So then when he makes that attempt to change the desires, long cherished desire, since time immemorial material desires, long cherished desire. But when he makes that change, he loses. So when he hears, he gets purified, and then he loses his desire to dominate. And as he loses, gradually and proportionately. So there are two things which are being compared. Proportion. Proportion means two things are there, right? What are the two things? Desire to dominate and spiritual happiness. Desire to dominate and spiritual happiness. So as the desire to dominate gradually reduces, then spiritual happiness gradually increases. So therefore, gradually and proportionately, that means to the degree the desire to dominate reduces, to that degree spiritual happiness increases. Gradually and proportionately, as he reduces his long desire to dominate, he comes to enjoy spiritual happiness. This is the solution. How to get free from the influence of the three modes. In a Vedic mantra it is said that as he becomes learned, In association with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he proportionately relishes his eternal blissful life. So this is what is being explained by the Yamadutas, that this is the solution. What? Isha Sangena. So this is the meaning of Isha Sangena. So this Isha Sangena is going to take place by hearing. Isha Sangat, yes, when one submits to the hearing process. Isha Sangat. Then one tries to change those desires. Towards the end of the purport, Prabhupada writes, thus one ends the tribulation caused by his association with the material energy. In summary, the living entity is an eternal servant of God, but he comes to the material world and is bound by material conditions because of his desire to lord it over matter. You see the same thing. There also Prabhupada writes the same thing. Desire to dominate. Desire to lord it over matter. Liberation means giving up this false consciousness and reviving one's original service to the Lord. This return to one's original life is called mukti. Mukti ritva nitarupam swarupena vyavastati. Okay. So now the Yamaduta, so these till now are the answers to the questions. So whatever questions the Vishnudutas asked, till now they have basically answered those questions. And so now the Yamadutas are justifying why they are trying to take Ajamil. And so now the Yamadutas are telling Ajamil story. Previously Shukdev Goswami told, but now Yamadutas are telling the same Ajamil story. Because they are saying, see, this is what Ajamil did, this was his life, therefore we are taking him, he did all nonsense, he did sinful things. Okay, read the translation to the next two verses, 56, 57.
In the beginning, this Brahmana Ajamila, named Ajamila, studied all the Vedic literatures. He was a reservoir of good character, good conduct, and good qualities, firmly established in executing all the Vedic injunctions. He was very mild and gentle. He kept his mind and senses under control. Furthermore, he was always truthful. He knew how to chant the Vedic mantras, and he was also very pure. Ajamil was very respectful to his spiritual master, the fire god, guests, and the elderly members of his household. Indeed, he was free from false prestige. He was upright, benevolent to all living entities, and well behaved. He would never speak nonsense or envy anyone.
Amazing list of good qualities. Even Shukdev Goswami doesn't speak so many details. The Yamadutas are speaking more details than Shukdev Goswami. So, because they have kept all record, no? So they know all details. They have kept all the record they have kept. So you can see so many good qualities. So, Srila Prabhupada begins his purport by saying the order carriers of Yamaraj, the Yamadutas, are explaining the factual position of piety and impiety and how a living entity is entangled in this material world. Describing the history of Ajamil's life, the Yamadutas relate that being a learned scholar and all that. And Vishwanath Thakur, he says, having spoken of the natures of dharma and adharma, the servants of Yama now illustrate adharma by showing how Ajamil is fit to be punished. So that's what they are trying to explain, why Ajamil is fit to be punished. In 2 verses, they speak of his righteous nature in order to show how his sinful nature was not suitable. Shila means good character, Vritta means proper conduct, Guna means good qualities like tolerance. So he had all of that. Okay, 5860.
Once this Brahmana Ajamil, following the order of his father, went to the forest to collect fruit, flowers, and 2 kinds of grasses called Samit and Kusha. On the way home, he came upon a Sudra, a very lusty 4th-class man, who was shamelessly embracing and kissing a prostitute. The Sudra was smiling, singing, and enjoying as if they were proper behavior. Both the Sudra and the prostitute were drunk. The prostitute's eyes were rolling in intoxication, and her dress had become loose. Such was the condition in which Ajamila saw them.
So this is the scene that he saw. Now, Prabhupada writes some important points in this purport. So Prabhupada writes, in this age of Kali, however, such sin is to be seen everywhere, for people all over the world have become shameless. Long ago, when he saw the scene of the drunken Shudra and the prostitute, Ajamil, who was a perfect brahmachari, was affected. Nowadays, such sin is visible in so many places, and we must consider the position of a brahmachari student who sees such behavior. For such a brahmachari to remain steady is very difficult unless he is extremely strong in following the regulative principles. Nevertheless, if one takes to Krishna consciousness very seriously, he can withstand the provocation created by sin. In our Krishna consciousness movement, we prohibit illicit sex, intoxication, meat eating, and gambling. In Kali Yuga, a drunk, half-naked woman embracing a drunk man is a very common sight, especially in the Western countries, and restraining oneself after seeing such things is very difficult. Nevertheless, now this is the solution, please note. If by the grace of Krishna, one adheres to the regulative principles and chants the Hare Krishna mantra, Krishna will certainly protect him. We can't protect ourselves. Grace. If by the grace of Krishna, what we have to try to do is what? Chant Hare Krishna and follow the regulative principles. We have to try to do this. So if we sincerely follow the instructions of the spiritual master, that attracts grace of Krishna, and then Krishna will protect. Krishna will protect. Indeed, Krishna says that his devotee is never vanquished. Kaunteya pratijani name bhakta pranashati. Therefore, all the disciples practicing Krishna consciousness should obediently follow the regulative principles and remain fixed in chanting the holy name of the Lord. Then there need be no fear. Otherwise, one's position is very dangerous, especially in this Kali Yuga. So, I'm giving you one small homework in this connection. So please read, you can note down if you want, please read 5th canto, 6th chapter, verses 2 to 5. Okay? 5th canto, 6th chapter, verses 2 to 5. Along with the purports, beautiful purports in this connection. Okay? Okay, so let's go ahead, read the translation. इधर पीछे भी दे दो ना, पीछे नहीं जा रहा है माइक. आप पढ़ो, अब ये पढ़ो अब.
The Sudra, his arm decorated with turmeric powder, was embracing the prostitute. When Ajamil saw her, the dormant desire in his heart awakened, and in illusion he fell under their control.
Okay, next.
As far as possible, he patiently tried to remember the instruction of the Shastras, not even to see a woman. With the help of his knowledge and his intellect, he tried to control his lusty desires, but because of the force of Cupid within his heart, he failed to control his mind.
Madana Vepitam. This Madan was very powerful. So Yavat Sattvam Yatha Shrutam. So he tried to remember the Shrutis, the Shastras. As far as possible, he tried his best. And in the word to word, you can see Yatha Shrutam, Prabhupada is writing, by remembering the instruction, and in brackets he writes, of celibacy, brahmacharya, not even to see a woman. So he was trying to remember all these instructions. But Madana was too powerful. So he failed to control his minds. And Prabhupada writes in his purport, unless one is very strong in knowledge, patience, and proper bodily, mental, and intellectual behavior, controlling one's lusty desires is extremely difficult. And the last sentence, because of the force of materialistic life, to maintain self-control is extremely difficult unless one is specifically under the protection of the Supreme Personality of Godhead through devotional service. Continue.
In the same way that the sun and the moon are eclipsed by a low planet, the Brahmana lost all his sense, good sense. Taking advantage of the situation, he always thought of the prostitute, and within a short time he took her as a servant in his house and abandoned all regulatory principles of Brahmana.
Yes. So, this is an important purport. And of course, Srila Prabhupada is almost explaining the whole pastime in brief, which we have already discussed. So here Prabhupada writes, he's quoting Swalpam Pesadharma Sitrayatama. Devotional service which begins with chanting of the holy name of the Lord is so powerful that even if one falls down from the exalted position of a Brahmana through sexual indulgence, he can be saved from all calamities if he somehow or other chants the holy name of the Lord. This is the extraordinary power of the Lord's holy name. And then he says, there are so many dangers in this material world that one may fall down from an exalted position at any time. Yet, if one keeps himself always pure and steady by chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, he will be safe without a doubt. That's the solution. Chanting. Next.
Thus, Ajamil began spending whatever money he had inherited from his father to satisfy the prostitute with various materials, presentations so that she would remain pleased with him. He gave up all his Brahminical activities to satisfy the prostitute.
So previously he was satisfying the Supreme Lord, now he is satisfying prostitute. So that is the change that took place. Here Prabhupada gives one instruction for Grihasthas. A Krishna conscious Grihastha should always remember this. One should be satisfied with his married wife. For even a slight deviation will create havoc. He should always be satisfied with one's wife and be peaceful simply by chanting Hare Krishna mantra. Otherwise, at any moment, he may fall down from his good position, as exemplified in the case of Ajamil. So even Grihasthas, we are seeing, are having difficulty. Sometimes even Grihasthas have difficulty. Next.
Because his intelligence was pierced by the lustful glance of the prostitute, the victimized Brahmana Ajamil engaged in sinful acts in her association. He even gave up the company of his very beautiful young wife, who came from a very respectable Brahmana family.
Next.
Although born of a Brahmana family, this rascal, bereft of intelligence because of the prostitute's association, earned money somehow or other, regardless of whether properly or improperly, and used it to maintain the prostitute's son and daughter.
Next.
This Brahmana irresponsibly spent his long lifetime transgressing all the rules and regulations of the Holy Scripture, living extravagantly and eating food prepared by a prostitute. Therefore, he is full of sins, he is unclean and is addicted to forbidden activities.
Next. You only read, Baba.
I will leave.
68.
68. This man Ajamil did not undergo atonement. Therefore, because of his sinful life, we must take him into the presence of Yamraj for punishment. There, according to the extent of his sinful acts, he will be punished and thus purified.
So in this way, they are justifying why they want to take him. So they're saying he has performed all these sinful acts and at the same time has not done atonement also. Therefore, he must be punished. Thus end the Bhagavad purports of the 6th canto, 1st chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The History of the Life of Jamil. Okay, fine. So tomorrow we'll continue with the 2nd chapter. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Granthra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Samved Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Hare Krishna. हाँ बोलो. Hmm. Hmm.
Kind of.
You'll get a perfect answer. Bhagavad Gita, 14th chapter, text 10. That is the answer to your question. You read that. That's the answer. I think so. I don't remember any specific reference for that, but I think so.
We find that Ajamil was a Brahmin and he was doing all good activities, maintaining cleanliness, following shastras, regulations, etc. But this fall down was there, which was actually an accidental one, where he happened because of those modes of nature, we just carried on. So in this case, it was said that actually one who is a devotee who is following all the regulations, in case of an accidental fall down, Lord pardons him.
Good question. Good question. The initial thing was accidental. Prabhupada explains this in his lectures. So the initial seeing that scene and then not able to control, that was accidental. But afterwards, whatever he did was nonsense. So afterwards, getting the prostitute to his house and then doing all those sinful activities, looting people, that was not accidental, that was all planned. So therefore, then he has to face the reactions.
Okay, so in this case, if a devotee plans his activity in the wrong way, so he's born to get that punishment.
Yes. Only if it is accidental, one accidental activity and the thing ends, then it's fine. Then he'll be excused. But not that series of activities are going on. अक्षय प्रभु ऑनलाइन थे क्या आज दोनों टाइम? वो सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट चीज.